This is my 20th Gnostic vlog, and I want to thank all the people that have subscribed to this channel and are watching the videos and sharing them and liking them and etc. etc. if you are doing any of those things. And if you're not, well, it doesn't matter, you know. I always think that it's not just the human audience that counts, you know what I mean? Anyway, and I mean, it's going to be like the 50th Gnostic vlog before I can sort of congratulate myself and you as well, because we're in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, and pandemonium and panic, and everything else beginning with pan that you can think of. I.O. pan. It's the coronavirus, indeed. One of the things, though, that I want to concentrate on today, though, about the coronavirus, is the fact that it's, there's such a lot of confusion surrounding it. I think there's so many different ideas about the coronavirus. Somebody's going to have to write a paper one day or a book about all the reactions to the coronavirus. Because I think it's quite interesting, really, emotional and intellectual. And of course, I've said to you before that, it isn't conspiracy theory that applies here, because literally the data that the governments of the world are getting in keeps changing every single day. And their responses have to fit with the data that they're getting. Otherwise, you're flying blind. But mostly, unfortunately, the governments are flying blind. And they don't really know quite what's going on either, which is often the way with disasters. The building's burning and you don't know whether to go up or down, and you don't know whether to stay put, and people are saying different things, and people are coming on and saying, well, buildings burn like this, and they're pretending they're experts and they don't know anything at all really about burning buildings. But what can you do, really? You've got to do something, or perhaps you've got to do nothing, or perhaps it doesn't really matter whether you do something or nothing. You're still going to die anyway, in which case you should be kind of making your peace with God and with yourself before you do die. And maybe that's a moral there for just general life in general. You don't know when you're going to die, do you? If the bomb's got your name on it, kind of thing. The finite worlds, the FW as I call it. I sound a bit like Ron Hubbard now, making all these acronyms for everything. FW, finite worlds. And there's so much confusion surrounding everything in the finite worlds, and you can often be thinking contradictory, let us say mixed emotions and mixed responses are quite general, are quite usual, really, for things that happen in the FW. And I mean, you could just say, God, this is just such a massive distraction from my spiritual exercises. But I put question marks at the end here, because if you're doing your spiritual exercises properly, you won't be distracted by the coronavirus. You'll rise to the occasion at the very least. And if you are being distracted by the coronavirus, you're not doing your spiritual exercises either at all, in name only, or you're not doing them very well, or you haven't just attained the objective of your spiritual exercises, which is equanimity, indifference, and flexibility and courage in the face of all the things, all the bogeymen that are around, either in your imagination or for real. And so therefore, a massive distraction. And a massive distraction, I suppose, for people actually doing their lives, because, life happens to you when you're busy making other plans. So it's sure a distraction from plans that people were making, and rivalries that they were trying to settle, and arguments that they were trying to settle, and all the rest of it, all the stuff that goes on in disaster movies, all the personal stuff, which at the final reckoning don't really mean a damn thing, because you're going to die, and therefore it doesn't matter, who said what to whom after that, does it really, in the face of that? And again, maybe that's a spiritual moral, that we should concentrate on the spiritual rather than on the personal or the personality-based things that we take such stock by. But everybody's been telling you this for years. So I don't know why it's going to make a difference if I tell you. You know it very well. So if I'm distracted by the coronavirus, this is a problem in me, not really the coronavirus even. Not even in the problem is not you, its problem is me. And my relationship to the world, my relationship to the universe. So that's that out of the way. Now, some people, of course, and you're probably reading all the boxes as I've been nattering on. The fact is that nothing is going to be the same after this coronavirus, that is for sure. And I think Russell Brand has a very good video on YouTube about how everything is going to change, or potentially has the power to change after this crisis or disaster. And lots of things are going to change. But as far as the economic, social economic situation or structure of the world, it could be that this is the Titanic that's sinking. And I've got a quote here from the Titanic film, that this boat is made of iron. I can assure you she will sink. And I use iron, of course. Well, iron is certainly from the quote. But Iron Age, the military-industrial complex is made of iron. The iron, the age of iron, the age of steam, which started the Industrial Revolution, blah blah blah. It might be all coming to an end, and all the hippie stuff of the 1980s and 70s, in 1970s and 80s is all going to come to fruition. We're going to have to live in, decentralized communes, living off the land, being as self-sufficient as you possibly can. But what about the salt, I say? What about the salt? Anyway, where are you going to get that from, So lots of things could change. I think the biggest thing that's going to change is the fact that the upper middle classes and the rich are going to be taxed to the hilt, because they're the only people that got the money to extract the tax from, to rebuild the shattered economies, and the fact that there's going to be 30, 40% unemployment, and you're going to have to, unless you want a revolution, unless you want to be hanging from a lamppost, you're going to have to help people genuinely. And for example, there's going to have to be a health tax of at least 10% additional to what you're paying now, in order to ensure that this disaster never happens again, or if it does happen again, that the health services will be able to cope with it. Because after 3.5 decades of neglect, both in the private and the public sector, the health services are going to have to be completely revamped, because this virus may come back, or a different virus may take its place, and we've got to have a plan in place before it does. So that's a sort of economic argument. So surely, I think for sure, economics is going to change, and some things will be taken into public ownership. So socialism, for example, the principle of socialism is going to be very much more prominent in politics than it has been, and it hasn't been sort of just done out of the intellectual arena. It hasn't been kicked out of the arena of socialism. Is still relevant today, as it always has been, which is, from each according to his from each according to his means, to each according to his need. That's the principle of socialism. So you can think about that one, and then of course, a lot of people are saying this is all just Project Fear, and if you don't know what Project Fear is, Project Fear is when governments, institutions, the media, and the culture conspire together, consciously or unconsciously, to spread fear and panic amongst the sheeple, amongst the people that follow, which is basically you and I as well, because we do follow things, and we follow tendencies, and we follow diffusion of social forces as well. But this is done either consciously or unconsciously to drive the price of shares and stock right down. And then when you think the prices are going to go back up again, of course you buy at the lowest level, and then you're sitting on an absolute fortune, of course, because your stocks and shares are worth so much more than they were. And there's the other thing, of course. That's the biggest benefit of Project Fear. The second thing is, of course, it enables government agencies to assume greater power. I'm not saying that the government, well, in some cases, the government might temporarily assume greater control over the individual, which of course might turn into a permanent situation. The powers that the government has in an emergency, they sometimes are rather reluctant to take back. Um, and this can certainly happen. But I think that aside, a lot of agencies also do get stronger and have more money from the public purse as a result of threat and disaster. For example, of course, the national uh, internal security agencies are often ones to benefit from increased budgets, and their jobs are secure as well because of the terrorist threat and things like that. So Project Fear is sometimes useful for giving certain government agencies more money from the public purse, and the government agencies, are not saying that they consciously conspire to do this, but they certainly take the opportunity. I think in this world, really, it's not so much a conspiracy, but it is so much as opportunism. If you look at species of animals and individual animals, all animals and species are opportunist. So it's an ill wind that blows nobody any good kind of principle, really. People obviously take advantage of a certain situation, especially disastrous situations or catastrophic situations, to benefit in some way. There may be some conspiracy to that, but I don't think it's all conspiracy. It's just simply the way that the universe is connected together. You've got to be opportunistic in this world. Otherwise you're going to get left behind in the dust. And finally, of course, Project Fear is useful because either consciously or unconsciously, mostly unconsciously, Project Fear works for the Demiurge and his agents. Obviously, as I said, to bring the Demiurge his daily breakfast of fear. So if you can increase fear through catastrophe or threat of catastrophe, then obviously, obviously his belly is full. And fear is the biggest thing. Fear is the root of everything, really. Definitely fear, and fear of letting go, of course, which is fear again, really. So the big F, fear is the feu. The feu of this world is fear, and that's the feu. That's the feu that really determines the energy of this world, which is fear, which isn't actually plenty or abundance. It's in fact a total opposite of it. But of course, one has to be careful because this statement itself, by talking about the demiurge feeding on fear, feeds into Project Fear itself. So you have to be careful about saying all this kind of stuff, really, and keep it to a minimum, because you don't want people watching this video and start to get more fearful, because otherwise I'm no better than the people that are spreading fear from Project Fear. But I'm not making this video for money, and I'm not trying to sell a book to anybody. So again, try not to sell books and make money from Project Fear, from talking about Project Fear and complaining about Project Fear like certain people do, and making money off it. That's unethical. And then the final thing, of course, which is sort of the antithesis of Project Fear, is that there really may be an actual threat. It may be real. It's not just government paranoia or media conflation of events. It may actually be a real threat. In which case, really, this list applies. It's about doing your duty. It's about putting others first. It's about doing what is necessary. It's about doing what you're told, etc., etc. And being a responsible citizen. But all these behaviours depend, of course, on love and trust. You will only put others before others before yourself and do as you're told if you love and trust the authority that's telling you to be like this or do things like this. If there's no love or trust of the government, love for the government or love or trust of the government and the institutions, etc., etc., then you're not going to get much cooperation, or you're going to get sporadic cooperation, which may not be enough in the face of threat to actually do something about it. So anyway, so I mean that could be a problem, and of course it's all this boy who cried wolf kind of parable as well comes in here, and again, if Project Fear is something which people kind of talk about a lot, then obviously there's not going to be much trust or fear, trust or love for the people in charge, or the people that are bringing us data. We don't trust the senses of other people, and we don't even trust our own senses. Then there's going to be a real problem there. So again, be careful about Project Fear. Be careful about peddling these ideas, because they also make mischief. And in any case, it's not really a Project Fear as in conspiracy. It's just opportunism, which is what nature is composed of, really. Everything is just opportunistic, more than conspiratorial. That's my point there. So this all brings us back to the massive distraction that is coronavirus. We're all dying. We're all going to die. Death and taxes. There's the only two sure things in this world. But it's fear that creates the problems. And of course, everything is just doing what it's doing. I mean, the famous story of the guru in his monastery in I think it's Tibet. Anyway, they were attacked by robbers, would you believe? The robbers were so hungry and desperate, they thought they would attack a monastery, a Tibetan monastery, in order to get money and food. So they ransacked through the monastery, beating the monks and the student monks, and they were just grabbing any sort of food they could and getting gold Buddhas. If they found anything gold, they just took it, and they were just it was just going crazy, and they were getting more and more violent. So one of the monks came to the guru, and said to the guru, what can I do about this? This is terrible. What you're just sitting there in your meditation, and all this is going on around you. You've got to do something, guru. You've got to come out and, I don't know, remonstrate with these terrible people and tell them to stop what they're doing, and tell them to tell them they're being immoral and they can't attack monks and they can't attack a monastery like this. But the guru just smiled and he said, these robbers are doing their svadharma. They are doing what robbers do. This is what robbers do. They beat people, they rob people. They get very stressed, they get very anxious, they get very angry. And this is their svadharma. This is in their nature, in the nature of things. And they're not going to change. Well, some of them may change, individuals may change, but as a group, robbers do what robbers do, especially when they're a group of robbers all, egging each other on to do worse and worse things. But they are just being true to their natures. And this is what everything does in this world. It's just being true to its nature. And if Maya, for example, the Lord of Illusion, is just doing what the Lord of Illusion is supposed to do, which is to blind us and distract us from our spiritual exercises. So he said the best thing to do really is to sort of calm down, and just sit down and do your meditation, do your pranayama, and let the robbers do whatever they want to do. And then down the line, someone's either going to rob them, or the police, or, some kind of military militia will deal with them eventually, and they'll die by the sword if they live by the sword. And they are going to have what they have, their karma, their svadharma. It's all an inevitability. And although hopefully one or two individuals from this brigand band will see the Buddha's message, or hear the Buddha's message and act on it, And if they do not, then they will have the life that they have, that they deserve. Well, not deserve, but the life which is inevitably going to arise from the way they're behaving now. You see. So, just sit down, relax, do your pranayam, and let them rob everything. Let them take everything that we have. It's okay. And I think the demiurge is also just doing what he does. So it's not a conspiracy; it's an opportunistic scenario. The demiurge is just doing what the demiurge does, and I think that's very important. And I don't even see the demiurge as some kind of fallen angel. I literally see the demiurge as being like the coronavirus, just doing what viruses do, what they do. Maybe one or two viruses may actually have enlightenment. You never know, and to think to themselves, we shouldn't be doing this. But I very much doubt it. Possibly you'll have better luck with robbers and brigands. One or two of them might see what they're doing is wrong, and become morally enlightened as well as spiritually enlightened. But I wouldn't hold your I wouldn't hold your breath. Really, it's pretty much unlikely. But you have to keep evangelizing, so that people can have the information that they need. And if they act on it, they act on it. And if they don't act on it, they don't act on it. And that's all basically you can say. So again, if you're allowing yourself to be distracted instead of doing the spiritual exercises, then that's basically down to you, and not even the thing that is distracting you. You're choosing to be distracted. And that's a hard thing to say, because a lot of people say, well, goodness me, we've got a lot to be distracted about, really. It sounds a bit heartless of you, really. And I suppose it is a bit heartless. But unfortunately, the truth is sometimes heartless, as well as the necessity to do what you have to do and do what you're told, and to follow instructions as well. And indeed, spiritual exercises are a set of instructions which you have to obey. You have to follow them. You don't have any choice in the matter. You have to you follow the method. Otherwise, it's not going to work. If you don't follow the recipe, you're not going to bake your cake, are you? Your sunshine cake. And I think that's all I have to say now on coronavirus, and it's going to be a long time before I can talk about something else at these anniversaries, 20th, 40th, 50th, 100th, or whatever, and until we get it, until loads of us get it. And when we've got it, we'll probably have to let it go again, because that's just in the nature of the finite worlds as well.